Hi, I'm Holly from Gadget, and this is the brand new Honor 5X. Now, this is a new phone from Honor, which is a sub-brand of the giant Chinese manufacturer Huawei, and Honor are really starting to put down roots in the UK. They're definitely one to watch if you like a bit of a tech bargain, because they make some really interesting Android phones for not a lot of money. And the 5X is absolutely one of those. So this costs $189.99. It's just come out, so that's SIM-free. You can buy it directly from Honor, also from Amazon or from 3. Now, it's designed to look like the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, which we can kind of see if we look at the back. But more than I think of museum, I think this looks like an HTC phone. It kind of reminds me of the HTC One M8 and the M9 with the curved brushed aluminium. And that's not a bad thing at all. I mean, this looks like a much more expensive phone. And there's those two are obviously flagships. This is only 190 quid. So for saying it looks like those phones, I think is quite a compliment. Next up, we're going to take a look at the specifications of this phone. So what do you get for your £190? Well, this has a Snapdragon 615 processor, so that's octa-core. It has 2 gig of RAM and 16 gigabytes of storage. Now, if you're thinking 16 gig is not a whole lot, which is fair enough, it does also have a micro SD slot, so you can expand that by up to 128 gig, which is really good to see because a lot of phones that cost more than this don't offer micro SD storage anymore. So that's really good to see. It has a 3000 milliamp battery, which is pretty high, and Honor say that that should last a moderate user a day and a half and a heavy user about a day. Well, I'm a very heavy user, so I'll be interested to see how I get on with that. In terms of camera, we have 13 megapixels on the back and 5 on the front. There's a 5-element lens. We've had a little bit of a go with that. It's looking pretty good. You know, so far the shots we've taken are coming out really well. Have a look on the website for camera samples. And on the front there, you've got some really interesting software tweaks. So for example, as well as the usual beauty mode, there's also perfect selfie, where you can kind of make tweaks that you like to make to your face. For example, if you like to make your eyes bigger or your face thinner, you can teach it that, and it will then make those changes to any selfies you take from then on, including ones you take with your friends. So if you take a picture with all your mates, it will pick you out, make those changes so that you look like an angel and they all look like scruffs, which we think is quite funny, but maybe a little bit odd. One of the other things we really like about this phone is that it has 3 card slots, so you can have a nano SIM card, a micro SIM and a micro SD all at the same time. And you can use those 2 SIM cards together, although you're going to have one on 3G and one on 4G. That said, it does work on all the 4G bands in the UK, which is always a relief to see from an internationally made phone, and it's just really nice to see that you're not going to have to choose between, for example, a second SIM and a micro SD card, which is the case on a lot of phones, and some phones don't offer you the second SIM capability at all. So that's a very thoughtful inclusion from Honor, we like that. On the software side, it's worth being aware that this runs Android Lollipop, which is the previous version of Android, not Marshmallow, which is the current version. That said, Honor told us that they're going to be getting Marshmallow onto this phone around March this year, which is not too long to wait, and indeed there are people with much more expensive phones than this one still waiting for Marshmallow 2, so at least you're not on your own. Having said that, this is not the kind of phone where you're going to notice so much what version of Android you're running, and that's because Honor and Huawei put their own spin on top of Android, so it's kind of an overlay called Emotion UI, which makes things look a little bit different. It's quite contentious, this one. Some people hate it because it forces you to put all your apps on home screens like on an iPhone, rather than tidying them all nicely away into a menu at the bottom. There are ways of getting around that. And also it has some themes that are a kind of acquired taste, I guess would be the nicest way to say it. But it is definitely worth being aware that you won't be first in line for Android updates. So that if that's important to you, you might not want to consider this phone. But then again, £190, can we really complain? Probably not. So if we take a closer look at that fingerprint sensor, you might remember from the Honor 7 that Honor added some extra functionality whereby you could swipe on the fingerprint sensor to do different functions on the phone. That is also the case on the 5X. So for example, once I've unlocked the phone, if I swipe down on the fingerprint sensor, that brings up my notifications, and swiping up gets rid of them, and swiping up brings up recent apps. That's very cool, but there's also some extra stuff which I think is really interesting. So on this phone, you can add up to 5 fingerprints, and Honor say that it only takes about 6 taps on the phone to register a fingerprint, whereas some other phones, for example the iPhone, you might take between sort of 10 and 16, and we have tested that, it is true. So once you've registered your 5 fingerprints, you can assign them to different functions on the phone, which is really cool. So bearing in mind that these only work from screen off, I've set my index finger to unlock the phone, which is pretty standard and pretty quick. I've set my middle finger to open YouTube, which has gone to a lovely Muse video there. And if I tap here with my ring finger, that should open Instagram. And again with my pinky finger, should give us Facebook. That's pretty cool. And then I've set my index finger on my other hand to call my mum. But I'm not going to demonstrate that because then you'd have her phone number and I know what you guys are like. So that was a very quick look at the brand new Honor 5X and some of the things we really like about it. It's out now in the UK and Honor say that it's going to be the most affordable premium device of 2016. Well, that remains to be seen, but from what we've seen today, we like the Honor 5X quite a lot. For £190, you can't really go too far wrong. Thank you for watching and we'll see you next time.